Carl Jung's most profound and perhaps most unsettling revelation wasn't merely about the nature of narcissism, it was a revelation of stark transformation. He unveiled the chilling truth of who the narcissist becomes when the empath, no longer able to sustain the charade, finally stops playing along. This pivotal moment triggers a dramatic psychological shift, an unmasking that can either shatter a person into complete breakdown or, more often, expose the calculating, manipulative core that lay dormant yet always present beneath a carefully constructed facade. Through his groundbreaking work on projection and shadow psychology, Jung meticulously documented what we might call supply withdrawal syndrome, a predictable and often terrifying pattern. This syndrome describes individuals with narcissistic traits who, having long sustained a grandiose self-image through the boundless accommodation and endless validation of their empathic partners, suddenly undergo dramatic and unsettling personality shifts when that lifeblood of external affirmation is abruptly removed. Jung deemed this discovery dangerous, not because it revealed a new pathology, but because it laid bare the fragile architecture of what he termed false self systems. These systems, built on the shifting sands of external mirroring, inevitably collapse without constant reinforcement. When the empath courageously withdraws their energy, their attention, and their very willingness to participate in the illusion, the narcissist doesn't simply experience sadness or loneliness. They undergo a profound metamorphosis, revealing what Jung called the unmasked shadow. This unmasking presents a stark dichotomy, either a miraculous capacity for genuine self-reflection and change, or, more commonly, the raw, unvarnished truth of their true exploitative nature. What made this revelation so disturbing to Jung was its chilling predictability. He could, with unsettling accuracy, forecast precisely how different types of narcissists would react when their primary source of validation was withdrawn, and why the vast majority would inevitably escalate their manipulation tactics rather than dare to confront their authentic, vulnerable self. Today we delve into Jung's profound insights about who the narcissist truly becomes when the empath finds their voice and stops playing along, and why he believed this crisis moment either forces a genuine, painful self-confrontation or, tragically, exposes the psychological predator that their accommodation had unknowingly been feeding all along. Jung's breakthrough case involved a patient describing their partner's complete and terrifying personality shift within mere days of the patient establishing firm boundaries. This partner, who for years had been charming, attentive, and seemingly loving, suddenly became what Jung documented as unrecognizably hostile. When the wellspring of accommodation dried up, Jung observed something chillingly strategic. The partner began to systematically weaponize intimate knowledge against the patient. Shared vulnerabilities, private fears, and cherished memories, once held sacred, were ruthlessly deployed as psychological attacks. This wasn't merely emotional distress, it was a calculated, cold warfare. The individual revealed a predatory intelligence, previously hidden beneath a veneer of loving behavior, a mask of affection that had flawlessly concealed their true intent. Jung wrote, "They demonstrated sophisticated understanding of psychological manipulation that could only have been developed through extended observation and practice." The patient described a profound sense of betrayal, feeling as though they had been living with a stranger, an unseen observer who had been meticulously studying them, gathering intelligence. This partner knew exactly which emotional buttons to press, which guilt tactics would be most effective, and which threats would inflict maximum psychological damage. Jung realized this wasn't simply a person changing under stress. This was someone's true, authentic nature finally becoming visible. The loving behavior had been a masterful performance, a strategic act designed solely to maintain access to their vital validation supply. When that supply was threatened, the performance abruptly ended, and the authentic, unvarnished self emerged from the shadows. This singular case shattered Jung's assumptions about relationship dynamics and unveiled what he termed psychological parasitism, individuals who ruthlessly feed off others' emotional resources, providing only strategic, conditional affection in return, a love that was never truly love, but a transaction. Jung discovered that narcissistic individuals construct what we might call validation dependency systems, intricate psychological structures that demand constant external confirmation to uphold their fragile self-image. Unlike healthy individuals who cultivate a robust internal sense of self-worth, these individuals forge their very identity through the reactions and reflections of others. Jung identified three critical components of their false self-system, each a pillar in their precarious psychological edifice. First, there's mirror dependency. They construct their entire self-image from external reflection, like a chameleon constantly changing its colors to match its surroundings. Without constant validation, they experience what Jung called identity dissolution panic, a profound terror that they will cease to exist, dissolving into nothingness without someone constantly confirming their importance, their brilliance, their very being. It's a terrifying void they desperately seek to fill. Second, shadow evacuation. Jung observed that these individuals meticulously project all negative traits, all perceived flaws and insecurities, onto their partners while reserving only positive, idealized qualities for themselves. The empathic partner thus becomes a psychological dumping ground, a receptacle for everything the narcissist cannot or will not accept about their own nature. It's a burden no one should ever bear. And third, control through confusion. They maintain dominance through what Jung called reality distortion tactics. This includes gaslighting, emotional manipulation, and strategic affection, all meticulously designed to keep partners uncertain about their own perceptions, constantly questioning their sanity, and utterly dependent on the narcissist's skewed version of reality. Jung realized this intricate system creates a form of psychological vampirism. The narcissist drains their partner's energy, vitality, and sense of self, while contributing nothing authentic, nothing genuine in return. The relationship becomes a one-way extraction operation, tragically disguised as love, a cruel illusion. When empaths, with newfound strength and clarity, begin to withdraw this vital validation, this entire precarious system trembles and collapses. Jung observed that the narcissist's response in this pivotal moment reveals their true psychological structure, and it is often far more predatory, far more calculating than anyone could have ever imagined. Jung identified precisely why narcissists often become more dangerous, more intensely manipulative, when empaths courageously establish boundaries. They enter what he called supply panic mode, a state where their very psychological survival feels profoundly threatened. Jung documented a chillingly predictable escalation pattern, a descent into deeper manipulation. First, you might witness a charm-offensive resurrection. Suddenly, they transform back into the person the empath always hoped they were, the idealized partner. They might meticulously recreate the early magic of the relationship, make grand promises of change, or demonstrate a perfect, almost uncanny understanding of previously ignored needs. It's a performance designed to lure you back into the web. Yet, when this initial charm offensive inevitably fails, Jung observed a swift and ruthless shift to guilt siege warfare. They weaponize the empath's innate compassion, their inability to tolerate causing pain, through claims of utter devastation, veiled threats of self-harm, or accusations of unimaginable cruelty. Jung noted they instinctively target the empath's inability to tolerate causing pain, exploiting this vulnerability with surgical precision. The empath's big heart becomes their greatest weakness in the face of such calculated malice. The final, most destructive phase Jung termed scorched earth psychology. When all other tactics fail, some narcissists, in their desperate bid for control, attempt to utterly destroy what they cannot possess. This can involve sabotaging relationships, spreading damaging information, or engaging in vicious reputation assassination campaigns to isolate their former validation source, leaving a trail of emotional devastation. Jung realized this terrifying escalation doesn't create toxicity, it simply strips away the layers, revealing the narcissist's authentic nature. They were never loving partners in the true sense. They were emotional predators who had masterfully learned to disguise exploitation as care. The empath's withdrawal doesn't conjure manipulation out of thin air. It exposes the calculated deceit that was always present, lurking beneath the surface. Most disturbing to Jung was the strategic, almost intelligent nature these individuals displays. Their escalation wasn't a desperate emotional outburst, it was calculated psychological warfare, meticulously designed to break down boundaries and restore their control. If you've experienced someone becoming more manipulative, more vindictive, when you dared to set boundaries, you know the stark reality. They showed you who they really were. Jung identified 4 distinct patterns, 4 faces of narcissistic unmasking that narcissists typically follow when their validation supply withdraws. Each pattern reveals a different, yet equally unsettling aspect of their true psychological structure. 1. The desperate hunter. These narcissists are psychologically incapable of surviving without external validation. Jung observed they become like parasites, frantically seeking new hosts, cycling through intense love bombing, crushing guilt trips, menacing threats, and grand promises, all with increasing desperation. Jung documented that they often develop what he called abandonment psychosis, losing touch with appropriate boundaries in their relentless pursuit of restored control. They may engage in stalking, create public scenes, or resort to harassment, brazenly revealing their core belief that others exist primarily to serve their emotional needs, not as autonomous individuals. 2. The rage demon. Jung identified narcissists whose carefully constructed false self dissolves into a primitive volcanic fury when their control is threatened. Their anger isn't born of loss or grief. It's a terrifying rage over what they perceive as their property's rebellion. They are furious that their psychological possession dared to declare independence. These individuals often engage in systematic punishment campaigns meticulously designed to make empaths regret their departure, to inflict pain as retribution. Jung noted their rage typically intensifies over time, fueled by narcissistic injury, a wound to their inflated ego, rather than genuine grief, tragically revealing the shallow, transactional nature of their original attachment. 3. The strategic replacer. Jung observed narcissists who, rather than processing the end of a relationship or engaging in self-reflection, immediately seek new validation sources. They often maintain supply backup systems, multiple relationships specifically designed as validation alternatives, like a chess player always having alternative moves. Jung noted strategic replacers frequently use these new relationships as weapons, ensuring former partners know they've been replaced, and often replaced with someone better. This tactic chillingly reveals their view of people as interchangeable validation providers, mere resources rather than unique individuals worthy of authentic, deep connection. 4. The master manipulator. Jung's most concerning category represents narcissists who seize the crisis of validation withdrawal as an opportunity to refine and develop even more sophisticated control tactics. They meticulously study what went wrong and adapt their approach for future relationships or reconciliation attempts. These individuals often adopt therapeutic language, spiritual concepts, or self-help terminology, not for genuine growth but as new, sharper manipulation tools. Jung observed they become empathy mimics, appearing to develop emotional intelligence, while in truth they are merely learning more effective exploitation techniques, becoming even more dangerous in their masquerade. Jung identified specific psychological mechanisms that explain why narcissists often become more harmful, more overtly destructive when empaths withdraw. This period, he warned, is often the most dangerous in toxic relationships. First, identity collapse terror. Jung observed that narcissists experience validation withdrawal as a literal threat to their survival, because their very identity depends entirely on external confirmation. Without their empathic mirror, they face what Jung called psychological annihilation anxiety. This profound terror, this fear of dissolving into nothingness, drives increasingly desperate and extreme behavior as their false self begins its agonizing crumbling. Jung noted they will often escalate to extreme tactics, even self-sabotage, rather than face the terrifying emptiness their grandiose persona was designed to hide. Second, control restoration compulsion. Jung documented that narcissists operate from what he called dominance dependency. Their psychological stability, their very sense of equilibrium, requires maintaining power and control over others. When that control is threatened, their system automatically activates escalating tactics to restore their dominant position. Jung observed this compulsion operates below conscious awareness. They don't consciously choose to become more manipulative. Instead, their psychological system activates what Jung called predator protocols, primal defense mechanisms that feel like necessary self-defense in their warped reality. Third, reality distortion amplification. Jung identified that narcissists often respond to criticism or abandonment by fabricating what he called victim mythology, elaborate, self-serving stories where they become the wronged party and their former partner becomes the abuser. This isn't always conscious deception, but what Jung termed protective self-mythology. Their fragile psyche simply cannot tolerate responsibility for relationship failure, so it automatically generates narratives that meticulously preserve their idealized self-image while simultaneously demonizing those who dare to threaten it. And finally, projection weaponization. Jung noted that when narcissists lose their primary projection target, the empath onto whom they could dump all their negative traits, they often engage in shadow spreading. They begin to see their own unacknowledged flaws and darkness reflected in multiple people throughout their environment. This creates pervasive persecution fantasies that, in their minds, justify increasingly hostile and aggressive behavior. They may launch campaigns against their former partner's friends, family, or colleagues, attempting to convince others of the empath's supposed toxicity, all while positioning themselves as the innocent, suffering victims. Jung, ever the healer, didn't just diagnose the problem, he developed systematic, empowering approaches to help empaths recognize narcissistic patterns and protect themselves during these dangerous withdrawal periods. These are Jung's protection protocols, a beacon of hope for those navigating the psychological storm. 1. Early warning recognition. Jung taught empaths to identify what he called false intimacy signals that narcissists expertly use to create an artificial yet powerful connection. This includes trauma, trauma bonding through shared vulnerabilities, future faking with elaborate, enchanting promises, and love bombing with overwhelming, intoxicating attention that feels glorious but subtly creates dependency. Jung emphasized recognizing empathy simulation versus authentic emotional intelligence. True empathy involves genuinely considering others' needs without expecting constant appreciation, while narcissistic empathy focuses solely on appearing, caring, to maintain their image or secure validation, a performance, not a connection. 2. Manipulation immunity training. Jung developed powerful techniques for resisting what he called emotional hijacking, when narcissists trigger intense feelings specifically designed to override rational decision-making. This includes recognizing guilt trips, cleverly disguised as vulnerability, identifying manufactured emergencies that coincidentally occur precisely when boundaries are being set, and developing what Jung called delayed response protocols, taking time, a precious pause, to consider emotional appeals rather than reacting immediately. Jung taught empaths to distinguish between genuine distress, which merits compassion, and strategic suffering. Emotional displays specifically designed to trigger rescue responses and restore the narcissist's control dynamics. 3. Strategic disengagement planning. Jung recognized that leaving narcissistic relationships isn't a spontaneous emotional decision made in crisis. It requires careful, meticulous preparation. This involves documenting harmful behavior patterns, creating robust support systems completely independent of the narcissist's influence, and developing what Jung called grey rock protocols, becoming so uninteresting, so emotionally unreactive, that narcissists lose their motivation to engage. Jung emphasized the critical importance of preparing for escalation phases, understanding that initial withdrawal often triggers intensified pursuit before the narcissist eventually and reluctantly abandons their target. 4. Reality reconstruction support. Jung stressed that healing from narcissistic relationships demands rebuilding accurate perceptions after extended exposure to gaslighting and manipulation. This involves what Jung called truth verification practices, checking perceptions with trusted, objective advisors, documenting interactions dispassionately, and most importantly, reconnecting with the internal wisdom and intuition that manipulation tactics had systematically undermined. Jung also emphasized developing authentic relationship standards by consciously seeking out and connecting with people who demonstrate genuine empathy, consistent character, and true emotional reciprocity. Jung's study of documented cases unveiled consistent, almost uncanny patterns in how narcissistic individuals respond when their control systems are disrupted, offering invaluable lessons for us all. 1. The charm cycling pattern. Jung identified individuals who could temporarily transform into whoever their partners needed them to be when threatened with abandonment, only to revert to their exploitative behavior once their sense of security was restored. Historical analysis consistently shows these individuals often studied their partners intensively, not from genuine interest or affection, but to develop more effective manipulation strategies. They became experts at triggering specific emotional responses like Pavlovian conditioning to maintain control. The key indicator, Jung noted, was that their change efforts were singularly focused on winning back their partner rather than genuine self-development. Any superficial improvements invariably disappeared once they felt secure in their restored control. 2. The rage reactor pattern. Jung documented cases where narcissistic masks completely dissolved when validation was threatened, revealing what he called primitive psychological structures beneath their civilized facades. These individuals often engaged in systematic destruction campaigns, attempting to damage their former partner's reputation, relationships, or livelihood as a brutal punishment for the withdrawal of validation. Jung observed that these rage reactors frequently couldn't even comprehend why intimidation and aggression didn't restore the previous dynamic, tragically revealing their fundamental misunderstanding of authentic human connection and the true nature of love. 3. The replacement strategy pattern. Jung identified narcissists who responded to validation loss by immediately securing new sources rather than engaging in any form of self-reflection. Pattern analysis clearly shows these individuals often maintained multiple relationship options, specifically as validation alternatives, confirming their view of people as interchangeable resource providers rather than unique individuals. Jung noted they frequently used new relationships as weapons against former partners, ensuring their ex-partners were aware of their replacement, further revealing their inability to process relationship endings without creating additional psychological damage and competition. 4. The authentic transformation pattern, rare but possible. Jung documented extremely rare, almost miraculous cases where validation withdrawal catalyzed genuine psychological development rather than merely escalating manipulation. These individuals demonstrated specific, profound characteristics: accepting responsibility without expecting forgiveness, actively seeking personal development resources independently, and, crucially, maintaining behavioral changes regardless of the relationship's outcome. Jung emphasized that authentic transformation required years of consistent, arduous work and often included painful regression periods, while false transformation appeared rapid, effortless, and perfectly tailored solely to reconciliation goals. Jung recognized that empaths need specific, proactive strategies to avoid repeating patterns with other manipulative individuals, as their very empathic nature often makes them recurring targets. This is about building narcissist-resistant communities. 1. Healthy individual recognition. Jung identified early, vital indicators of emotional maturity, demonstrating genuine interest in others without expecting constant appreciation, handling disagreement without becoming hostile or withdrawing affection, and taking personal responsibility for their own emotions without expecting others to manage their emotional state. Jung noted that emotionally healthy people can discuss their needs clearly without resorting to manipulation tactics, respect boundaries without requiring extensive justification, and show consistent character rather than dramatic, chameleon-like personality shifts based on circumstances. They are a steady anchor in a stormy world. 2. Manipulation, resistance building. Jung taught empaths to develop what he called psychological antibodies against common control tactics. This includes recognizing when someone's emotional crises consistently coincide with boundary-setting attempts, identifying patterns of selective empathy where concern only appears when it benefits them, and noticing obligation creation through excessive early generosity designed to create feelings of debt. Jung emphasized developing external reality verification through trusted advisors who can provide objective perspectives when manipulation may be distorting perception, acting as a truth compass. 3. Authentic connection, cultivation. Jung passionately recommended seeking relationships with what he called secure individuals, people who provide consistent appreciation without creating dependency or demanding unlimited accommodation. These relationships are characterized by mutual emotional investment, reciprocal consideration of each other's needs, and natural conflict resolution that focuses on solutions rather than blame or control. Jung stressed the profound importance of fostering communities where sensitivity is valued and protected rather than exploited, and where empathy is appreciated and reciprocated without being taken advantage of. A true sanctuary for the soul. What truly changes during the unmasking process isn't the narcissist's core, but our perception of it. Jung documented that a narcissist's post-withdrawal behavior doesn't create new personality traits. It merely reveals their authentic, unvarnished character. 1. The performance collapse. Jung observed that narcissists initially attempt to maintain their persona through intensified charm, but without consistent validation feedback, this performance becomes utterly unsustainable. During this phase, Jung noted they often reveal entitlement leakage, making demands that brazenly expose their deep-seated belief that others exist solely to serve their needs. Their raw frustration when usual tactics fail tragically reveals the calculated, strategic nature of their previous, loving behavior. 2. The control desperation phase. When charm inevitably fails, Jung documented a predictable escalation to more overt dominance tactics, including ruthless guilt manipulation, emotional blackmail, and widespread reality distortion campaigns. Jung emphasized this escalation isn't new behavior, it's simply the removal of the restraints, the dropping of the mask that had previously hidden their authentic, predatory approach to relationships. Their chilling willingness to cause psychological harm to restore control reveals their true, self-serving priorities. 3. The supply replacement hunt. Jung identified that most narcissists respond to validation loss by frantically seeking new sources rather than engaging in any self-reflection whatsoever. This process reveals what Jung called relationship interchangeability, their cold, transactional view of people as mere providers of specific psychological services rather than unique individuals worthy of authentic, profound connection. 4. The long-term character revelation. Jung observed that extended observation reveals consistent patterns across multiple relationships and situations, often leading to a painful social consequence accumulation as their manipulation tactics become widely recognized. Jung noted that unmasked narcissists rarely learn from repeated relationship failures. Instead, they develop increasingly sophisticated victim narratives to explain their consistent pattern of relationship destruction, forever trapped in their own self-deception. If you've watched someone's true, unsettling character emerge when they lost control over you, you know the profound truth: the mask always falls eventually. Jung profoundly believed that understanding narcissistic patterns serves far broader social functions beyond mere individual protection. It is a vital cultural warning system. 1. Collective pattern recognition. Jung observed that narcissistic individuals often thrive in cultures that prioritize image over substance and competitive dominance over collaborative growth. Their behavior, therefore, reveals widespread cultural dysfunction, tragically disguised as normal social interaction. When empaths learn to recognize and courageously resist these patterns, Jung noted they become cultural antibodies that refuse to enable toxic dynamics, forcing more authentic relationship standards through their conscious, empowered choices. 2. Prevention through education. Jung emphasized that understanding manipulation tactics serves as a powerful psychological vaccination against future exploitation, helping people recognize harmful patterns long before becoming deeply invested. Jung noted that cultures where narcissistic behavior faces consistent consequences develop higher emotional intelligence standards and expectations of genuine empathy and accountability in relationships, fostering a healthier societal fabric. 3. Relationship evolution catalyst. Jung believed increasing recognition of these patterns represents a crucial step in consciousness evolution. Humanity's growing ability to distinguish between authentic love and sophisticated exploitation cunningly disguised as care. He saw empaths who successfully extract themselves from narcissistic relationships as powerful teachers, guides who help others recognize similar patterns, creating protective networks and beacons of wisdom for vulnerable individuals. The liberation in seeing clearly is perhaps the greatest gift. The narcissist who loses their empathic validation source doesn't transform, they reveal who they always were beneath the carefully maintained facade. Jung's research unequivocally shows this isn't transformation but exposure, the removal of the accommodation that had tragically helped them maintain their mask for so long. When the empath, with newfound strength, stops playing along, the narcissist is confronted with a profound choice: genuine, painful self-examination or escalating manipulation. Jung's observations reveal that most, tragically, choose manipulation over growth, confirming that their loving behavior was merely strategic performance rather than authentic emotion. The most profound, truly transformative change, however, belongs to the empath who finally sees clearly. Jung believed recognizing these patterns develops conscious discernment, a spiritual compass that protects empathy while resolutely refusing to enable exploitation. Your sensitivity, your beautiful capacity to feel deeply, becomes your greatest strength when protected by wisdom, rather than depleted by endless unreciprocated accommodation. The very traits that once made you vulnerable to manipulation also make you capable of extraordinary authentic connections when you choose partners who honor, rather than exploit, your emotional depth. The narcissist's post-withdrawal behavior in all its raw manifestation, whether they pursue, rage, replace, or in those rare moments, truly transform, serves as the final, undeniable confirmation of the relationship's true dynamics. Their response, whatever it may be, validates your courageous decision to protect yourself from continued psychological harm. Jung concluded these experiences serve as psychological initiations, painful but profoundly necessary processes that develop emotional intelligence, boundary skills, and the sacred ability to distinguish between authentic love and sophisticated manipulation. If you've witnessed someone's true character emerge when they lost control over you, you have embraced a powerful truth. You choose authentic connection over comfortable illusion. Your journey from unconscious accommodation to conscious, empowered boundaries contributes not only to your own healing, but to the vital cultural evolution toward healthier relationship standards for everyone.